Have you ever felt weak? Not because your body failed you, but because something inside you feels tired, heavy, unfinished? Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I know I'm capable of more, so why do I feel like this? You want strength, real strength, the kind that doesn't collapse when life gets hard, the kind that keeps going when motivation disappears. But instead, you feel stuck, afraid, exhausted in ways sleep can't fix. You watch others move forward while you hesitate. You tell yourself, I'll push harder tomorrow. I'll become stronger when things calm down, when I'm more confident, when I'm ready. And slowly, quietly, you begin to wonder if maybe you're just not strong enough. But what if that belief is wrong? What if the reason you feel weak is not because strength is missing, but because you've been taught the wrong definition of it? What if everything you think strength looks like, confidence, fearlessness, loud victories, unbreakable energy, is actually hiding the kind of strength that matters most? Because real strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it survives in silence. Sometimes it looks like getting up when no one sees you. Sometimes it looks like standing still when everything inside you wants to run. And sometimes the strongest people in the room are the ones who feel the weakest. This story is not here to hype you up. It's not here to give you empty motivation. This story is here to challenge the way you see yourself, to dismantle what you think strength is, and to show you something far more powerful than confidence or courage. By the end of this story, you won't be asking, how do I become stronger? You'll realize you already are. You just haven't recognized it yet. And once you do, everything changes. That he was not weak. At least, not in the way people usually imagine weakness. He could work long hours without complaining. He could carry heavy loads. He could endure more than most people. He lived in a quiet place. The kind of place where days moved slowly, where routines repeated themselves, where nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen. A small town, familiar faces, the same roads walked every morning. To the outside world, his life looked ordinary, unremarkable, predictable. He woke up early. He showed up on time. He did what was expected of him, and then he disappeared back into the background. People described him with soft words. He's quiet. He keeps to himself. He's not the type to push back. They didn't mean harm. They were simply describing what they saw. Someone who didn't raise his voice. Someone who didn't demand attention. Someone who didn't try to prove anything. And slowly, without anyone ever saying it directly, a label formed around him. Weak. Not because he failed. Not because he quit. But because he didn't look the way strength was supposed to look. He noticed it in small moments. When decisions were being made, others spoke first. When challenges appeared, others were chosen. When confidence filled the room, he stayed silent. Not because he had nothing to say, but because he believed strength belonged to louder people. Inside him, there was a quiet conflict. He believed strength was visible, obvious, bold. He thought strength meant confidence that never shook, talent that didn't need time, power that entered a room before words did. And when he compared himself to that image, he always came up short. He told himself stories. I'm just not built like that. I don't have that kind of presence. Some people are born strong. Others aren't. Those thoughts didn't scream. They whispered. And because they whispered, they stayed. He didn't hate himself. He wasn't hopeless. In fact, deep down, he felt something else. Potential. A quiet knowing that there was more inside him than he had ever used. But potential without permission feels dangerous. He did more than required, but asked for nothing. In conversations, he listened more than he spoke. When pressure arrived, he absorbed it quietly. From the outside, it looked like calm, like acceptance. From the inside, it felt like restraint. There were moments, small, fleeting moments, when he almost stepped forward, when he almost spoke up, when he almost challenged himself. But then doubt arrived. What if he failed? What if he looked foolish? What if this only proved what everyone already believed? So he stayed where it was safe, not comfortable, just familiar. People praised him for being reliable, for being easygoing, for not causing problems. They didn't realize those compliments slowly built a cage, and every time he accepted them, he pushed the door closed a little tighter. At night, when the world was quiet, his thoughts became louder. He replayed moments where he stayed silent, Opportunities he let pass. Strength he felt but never showed. He wondered how someone could feel so capable and yet feel so invisible at the same time. And the hardest part was this. He didn't feel weak. He felt unused, like a muscle never tested, like a fire never lit. But because no one ever called him strong, he assumed he wasn't, because strength, as he understood it, belonged to others. And so he waited, not for change, but for permission, not knowing that the very thing he was waiting for was already inside him, unrecognized, untrained, and dangerously underestimated. That at first, nothing seemed wrong. Life continued the way it always had. The same mornings, the same responsibilities, the same familiar paths. And in the beginning, that familiarity felt safe. When tension appeared, he stepped aside, not because he was afraid of conflict, but because he believed strength meant never needing to fight for space. When his opinion differed, he swallowed it. When his ideas formed, he kept them quiet. When opportunity knocked softly, he waited for a louder invitation. Mature, controlled, but patience slowly became avoidance. There were moments when he felt the pull. A discussion at work where he knew the answer, but someone else spoke louder. A challenge he could have taken, but let someone else step forward. A chance to push himself just a little further. To stay longer, try harder, risk failure. And instead, he chose what felt easier. Comfort. Not comfort as pleasure. Comfort as familiarity. The familiar weight of staying invisible. Each time, the decision felt small. Insignificant. Just one moment. Just one step back. But those moments began to stack. Days passed. Then weeks. Then months. And nothing changed. From the outside, his life looked steady. Predictable. Uncomplicated. From the inside, something began to tighten. He noticed it when he watched others move forward. People who once stood beside him now stood ahead. They weren't smarter. They weren't stronger. They were simply willing to step into discomfort. And each time he saw it, a quiet thought surfaced. Why not me? He answered it quickly, almost automatically. I'm just not strong enough. He didn't say it out loud. He didn't even fully believe it. But repetition gives thoughts power. Every avoided challenge reinforced it. Every early retreat confirmed it. I'm just not built for pressure. I don't have that kind of resilience. I'll fail if I try. Those thoughts became companions. They walked with him through his days. They sat beside him in silence. And slowly, he began organizing his life around them. He stopped reaching for things that scared him, stopped volunteering for difficulty, stopped testing his limits. Not because he lacked ability, but because he feared discovering the truth, that maybe he really was weak. There were moments when frustration broke through, moments when he felt trapped inside himself, when he looked at his life and thought, this can't be all I am. But frustration without action, not the kind that explodes, the kind that settles, the kind that makes you avoid mirrors, avoid questions, avoid dreams. At night, when everything slowed down, he replayed the same scenes, the words he didn't say, the chances he didn't take, the strength he felt slipping further away. He told himself tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he'd push back. Tomorrow he'd try harder. Tomorrow he'd prove something, to himself if no one else. But tomorrow arrived gently, and gently he stayed the same. Each day felt like practice for a life he never started. And the most painful part wasn't failure. It was the feeling that something inside him was slowly fading from disuse, like a muscle that weakens not from strain, but from neglect. He wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated, but he was drifting, and somewhere deep down, beneath the routines and excuses, beneath the quiet and restraint, a question began to form, not loud enough to change him yet, but loud enough to disturb him. What if the real danger wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that he would never find out? The moment didn't arrive with drama. There was no warning, no announcement. It came quietly, the way most turning points do. It happened on an ordinary day, in an ordinary place, when life was supposed to continue the way it always had. He was watching someone everyone admired, someone people called strong, the kind of person who spoke without hesitation, who walked with certainty, who never seemed unsure of themselves. This person filled rooms with confidence. Others listened when they spoke. Decisions followed their voice. This, he believed, was strength. And yet, when pressure arrived, something unexpected happened. The challenge was real this time. Not theoretical, not distant. A mistake, a sudden responsibility, a moment where control slipped away. And for the first time, the strong one hesitated. Their voice tightened. Their confidence cracked. They pushed forward where none existed. But when resistance grew, so did panic. Excuses followed. Blame shifted. The room fell quiet. And then it happened. They broke. Not in public anger, not in dramatic collapse, but in retreat. They stepped back, avoided responsibility, left others to deal with the consequences. The moment passed quickly, but something inside him stayed unsettled. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about it. How someone so confident could unravel so easily. How strength, as he understood it, had vanished the moment it was tested. The next day, he crossed paths with someone else. Not impressive, not loud, someone most people overlooked. Older, calmer, unassuming. They worked without being asked, spoke only when necessary, moved steadily, without urgency. And yet, when pressure appeared, they didn't flinch. They absorbed it. When things went wrong, they stayed. When others looked away, they leaned in. He noticed how they didn't rush to explain themselves, didn't defend their image, didn't perform strength. They simply endured. At one point, almost without thinking, he asked them a question. How do you stay so calm? The answer came without pride. Because I don't confuse strength with control. The words landed heavier than expected. What do you mean? He asked. The person paused, not for effect, but for honesty. Most people think strength is about never breaking, they said, but real strength is about what you do after pressure hits. He didn't respond. The idea felt uncomfortable. They continued, not lecturing, just observing. Anyone can look strong when life is easy. Anyone can be confident when nothing is at stake. They looked at him then. Strength doesn't show itself when things are calm. It shows up when things stop going your way. He wanted to argue, to dismiss it, but something inside him resisted. Because if that was true, then everything he believed about strength was incomplete. That night, the thoughts returned. If strength wasn't loud, if strength wasn't confidence, if strength wasn't control, then what was it? He replayed moments from his own life. Times he stayed when things were uncomfortable. Times he endured quietly. Times he carried weight no one noticed. Were those moments weakness or something else? The question followed him. He didn't have an answer, and that unsettled him more than doubt ever had, because doubt had given him an excuse. This question did not. He stood at the edge of a realization, but couldn't step into it yet. If his definition of strength was wrong, then the problem was bigger than fear. It meant he might have been measuring himself against the wrong standard all along. And if that were true, then he wasn't weak. But he wasn't sure what he was either. The certainty he once leaned on was gone, replaced with something quieter, unfinished. And as he moved forward, one thought refused to leave him. If strength isn't what I thought it was, then what happens when I'm finally tested? It didn't happen all at once. That's how breaking really works. It starts with pressure, quiet, unnoticed, and then one day it becomes too much. The crisis arrived without asking if he was ready. A responsibility fell on his shoulders, one he could not avoid, one he could not pass to someone louder, one that demanded presence, not confidence. Something went wrong, not a small mistake, not something that could be quietly corrected, a failure that rippled outward. People were affected. Consequences followed. Eyes turned toward him, and in that moment, everything he feared arrived at once. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. His heart raced, not from weakness, but from the weight of expectation. He looked around for the people everyone called strong, the confident ones, the decisive ones, the voices that usually filled the room. They were silent. Some avoided eye contact. Some shifted responsibility. Some disappeared entirely. The ones he believed suddenly, would lead. The truth became impossible to ignore. Strength, at least the kind he had believed in, was absent when it mattered most. The pressure intensified. Voices rose. Accusations surfaced. Fear spread quickly. He felt it inside his chest, the instinct to retreat, to step back, to disappear the way he always had. His mind raced. I can't handle this. I'm not strong enough. I'll make it worse. The old belief clawed its way back. And for a moment, just a moment, he almost gave in. But there was nowhere to go. No one else stepped forward. So he stayed. Not because he felt brave. Not because he felt capable. Because leaving would cost more than staying. The hours stretched. Every decision felt heavy. Every word felt dangerous. Mistakes loomed. And then it happened. The confident figure from before, the one everyone admired, returned. But not as a leader. As a shield. They spoke loudly. Defensively. Desperately. They tried to control the narrative. To protect their image. And when that failed, they broke. Not quietly this time. Anger surfaced. Blame exploded. They refused responsibility. And walked away. The moment landed like a blow. He stood there, surrounded by chaos. Watching strength, as he wants to find it, collapse in real time. And suddenly, he understood the cost of illusion. While others protected themselves, he absorbed the impact. While others escaped, he stayed with the consequences. The situation did not improve quickly. There were losses. There were setbacks. There were moments when he felt completely exposed. But something unexpected happened. He didn't break. Not dramatically. Not heroically. He endured. He listened. He responded carefully. He owned what he could and carried what he couldn't fix yet. People noticed. Not immediately, but slowly. In the silence between accusations. In the steady tone of his voice. In the way he remained when others fled. The chaos peaked. Everything felt unstable. In the quiet aftermath. Uncertain. He stood alone. Exhausted. Shaken. The world felt different now. Not because it had changed, but because his illusions had. He had been tested. Not in the way he imagined. Not in the way he prepared for. And he was still standing. That realization hit harder than the crisis itself. Strength hadn't shown up as confidence. It hadn't arrived as fearlessness. It hadn't announced itself at all. It had revealed itself through endurance. But the cost was heavy. As the dust settled, he felt the weight of what had been lost, and the weight of what could no longer be denied. Something inside him had shifted. The question was no longer theoretical. It was personal. If this was strength, then why did it feel so painful? And more importantly, if this was strength, what would it demand next? That night, the world went quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of silence that arrives after something breaks. He sat alone. The lights were off. The room barely visible. His body felt heavy, not from work, but from everything he had carried without realizing it. The day replayed itself in fragments. Voices, faces, moments where he almost stepped away, moments where he stayed. His chest tightened as the truth surfaced. He had been afraid of this moment his entire life. The moment where strength would be tested. And yet, he was still here, still breathing, still standing, exhausted but unbroken. The realization didn't come all at once. It unfolded slowly, quietly, like something long buried finally reaching the surface. Strength was never the absence of fear. He had felt fear, deeply. Strength was not confidence that never wavered. His confidence had cracked more than once. Strength was endurance, staying when everything inside you begs you to leave. Strength was choosing to stand again, when a weight feels unbearable. Strength was discipline in the dark, when no one is watching, when no one is praising, the moments he once dismissed, the times he stayed quiet but steady, the pressure he absorbed without recognition, the responsibility he carried without applause. Those moments weren't weakness. They were training. He had mistaken silence for fragility, endurance for insignificance, restraint for fear, and suddenly, everything made sense. Strength had never been something he lacked. It was something he misunderstood. It didn't arrive when a crisis hit. It didn't appear when others disappeared. It had been there long before, waiting, unacknowledged, unused. The thought landed gently, but firmly. Strength didn't arrive. It was already there. A breath escaped him. Not relief. Release. The kind that comes when you stop fighting the truth. For the first time, He didn't feel the need to compare himself to anyone. Not the loud, not the confident, not the admired. Their definition of strength no longer applied to him. He had faced pressure. He had endured. He had stayed. And that changed everything. The exhaustion was still there. The consequences were still real. But something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't waiting for permission anymore. He wasn't waiting to feel strong. He knew it now. And knowing it didn't make him loud. It made him grounded, calm, unshakable in a way he had never felt before. He stood up slowly, not energized, not inspired, resolved, because strength, he realized, is not about how you feel in the moment. It's about what you choose. Well, the moment demands everything. And tonight, in the quiet aftermath, with no audience, no applause, no recognition, he chose to stand. Change did not happen overnight. There was no sudden surge of energy, no dramatic declaration, no moment where the world noticed all at once. The next morning came quietly. He woke up tired, still sore, still carrying the weight of what had happened. But something was different. He didn't wait to feel ready. But because he got up, not because he needed to announce itself. The days that followed were ordinary. Work continued. Responsibilities remained. Consequences still needed to be faced. But his relationship with difficulty had changed. When pressure appeared, he didn't retreat. He didn't rush either. He stayed. He listened more carefully. He spoke when it mattered. He chose consistency over comfort. There were no witnesses to most of it. No one applauded when he showed up early. No one noticed when he stayed late. No one congratulated him for doing what needed to be done. And that was enough. He stopped measuring himself against others. Stopped waiting for validation. Stopped needing proof. Strength, he learned, grows in repetition, in the quiet discipline of doing the right thing again and again, especially when no one is watching. Weeks passed, then months. People began to notice something, though they couldn't quite name it. He hadn't become louder. He hadn't become aggressive. He hadn't changed who he was. But he carried himself differently. When challenges came, he didn't avoid them. When conflict appeared, he didn't disappear. When uncertainty arrived, he didn't panic. He stood, calm, measured, present, and slowly, the label that once followed him began to fade. Not because he demanded respect, but because he earned trust. People stopped speaking over him, stopped overlooking him, stopped mistaking quiet for weakness. Not because he proved anything, but because he no longer needed to. The strongest change wasn't visible. It was internal. He no longer feared pressure. He no longer feared being tested. He no longer feared discovering his limits. Because he had already faced the hardest truth. He was strong, not in the way he once imagined, but in the way that lasts. And now, when he moved forward, he did so without urgency, without performance, without doubt, just steady progress, just quiet power, the kind of strength that doesn't ask to be seen, and the kind that remains. Long after the noise fades, that if this story felt familiar, it's because it wasn't really about him. It was about you, about the moments you stayed silent when you wanted to speak, the times you stepped back when you could have stepped forward, the weight you've carried quietly, believing it meant you were falling behind. You're not weak for feeling tired. You're not broken for doubting yourself. And you're not behind because your strength doesn't look loud. Real strength isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move anyway. It's showing up on the days no one claps. It's choosing discipline over comfort. It's standing again, not because you feel ready, but because you refuse to disappear. If you're waiting for confidence to arrive, stop. It doesn't arrive. It's built, slowly, quietly, through choices no one sees. And if today all you can do is take one small step, that's enough. Because strength was never something you had to become. It was always something you already were. So don't rush. Don't compare. Just keep going. And if this story found you at the right moment, stay with us. Not for motivation, but for alignment. You're stronger than you think.